Welcome back to The Big Picture and my conversation with Mark Poloncarz. We're talking about all things county and the county executive race this year. We had just talked a little bit about the convention center, a possibility of the future of either the existing convention center or a new possibility. And when you talk about the convention center, often people will join that into talk of a stadium for the Bills. And I don't want to kind of get premature on that kind of a subject of Bills, but if you're going to talk about the convention center, isn't that kind of a natural, is to talk about perhaps a combined facility?
Well, a lot of people seem to think so, but if you look at the actual statistics of convention centers and football stadiums, there's really only one that does that, and that's in Indianapolis. And when you talk to the folks in Indianapolis, they say it's great until the football season starts, and then you can't use the convention center at all, or you can't use the football stadium for conventions because the football team wants to be there. The NFL controls its stadium so much that they don't want anybody else there unless they control it and the revenues that come in. I think for our market, we have to look at what's best for us. And so right now we are examining the issues associated with the convention center. We had a report done that took a look at the convention center and said it was functionally obsolete. Remember, our convention center dates back to 1978. We have this great new Buffalo, all this new investment in town. We have a convention center that is 40 years old. And there's things you can do inside to make it a little bit better, but it doesn't compare to the convention centers of similar markets. So what we're doing right now is we have two sites that we're looking at for a potential new convention center. I should say one that's a brand new convention center, the other one that would be basically an addition to it and a renovation of the current facility. We need to take a look at some additional information with regards to engineering and environmental matters, and also determine what the true cost at either site would be. I have had conversations with the Buffalo Bills regarding stadium issues. We always do. Sit down at least once a year, sometimes twice, with Kim Pagula and then other members of the staff from the Bills to talk about issues associated with the stadium. Right now, they're not interested in a new stadium. They're happy where they are. They just put $36 million in the stadium over the last 2 years. That's a lot of money. They're smart business people. They're not going to put $36 million in a stadium that they're going to move from in the next few years. But we always have to have these conversations, and they'll continue. It's not an easy thing because you can't just drop a football stadium in downtown Buffalo. As you and I were talking about in the break, you'd basically have to wipe out multiple blocks for that to happen. And I think right now we need to talk about the things that matter for the people in this community, which is ensuring we stay in the tourism business, and that's by having a modern convention center.
Well, Buffalo, in past generations, I mean, up until the 1950s, Buffalo was very geographically blessed because all the traffic had to stop here.
Correct.
It made us a major force in this country because of the commerce. Then we got bypassed. You know, the St. Lawrence Seaway went in, and suddenly we weren't what we used to be. And we started to fall on hard times. But we still have that waterfront, okay? It's just kind of laying there and not really serving any useful purpose. And if you look at other cities, Cleveland, maybe Baltimore, San Francisco, there's a lot of cities that have that blessing of a waterfront, if that's used properly. Now, I know there's problems with every project. For instance, a stadium or a convention center, no matter where you put it, if it's a new one, you're going to knock down buildings, you have to acquire land, and so on and so forth. But long term, if you overcome the problems, wouldn't developing the outer harbor, for instance, make the long-term image of the city benefit more than using in the city, like a South Buffalo location? I mean, if you're going to be thinking forward?
Well, for a convention center, you got to be within walking distance of where the people want to be, which is hotels, restaurants, retail. You can't be out on an island, so to speak. A stadium could be. The problem with the stadium on the waterfront is getting people in and out of it. I mean, think about it. Last year, I think they had the Italian festival on the waterfront on the Outer Harbor, and they had difficulties getting people in and out, and we're talking about 5,000 to 6,000 people. They've had concerts out there and they've had traffic jams backed up for 10,000 people. If you put a football stadium out there, you need to be able to get 70,000 people safely in and out, and it doesn't have the ingress and egress to do it. I totally agree with you. We need to continue to redevelop our outer harbor. I sit on the Erie Canal Harbor Development Board. I've been pushing for smart development, that is development that brings together businesses that are going to invest out there, as well as passive development where people can get out there. We just don't want to leave it empty. But we do have some transportation issues getting a lot of people in and out on the waterfront, because the only access point we have is Route 5. Right. And how often during the winter is Route 5 shut down because of dangerous conditions?
The Skyway, certainly, yes.
Yeah, so that's the problem.
Those are the short-term problems, as I say. If you can overcome those, and again, you're going to have problems anywhere you go, but if you can overcome those and deal with them short-term, what I'm saying is the long-term benefits. If you put, for instance, a stadium or convention center out in that area and use it as an anchor to draw other businesses, boutiques and hotels, and to cultivate a culture in that area to build it up. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, okay, I will say this. There's a misnomer that if you build a stadium, it will bring ancillary business around it. It doesn't happen. There's a great website. It's called Field of Schemes. Not Field of Dreams, Field of Schemes. And it follows all the investments that communities make with regards to sports stadiums. And it shows how when they say it's going to develop our region, it doesn't. A convention center does develop stuff around it, but the problem is you have to have the infrastructure in place, because you can't just put it on their own. I agree with you. If we could say we're going to spend $3 billion to redo the transportation and ingress and egress to a site, it would be great, and we'd do it. The problem is we don't have the money to do that. And I don't think the public wants us to go out there and raise taxes by a huge amount to pay for this stuff. So our goal is, how do we do it in a manner that won't break the bank, that will allow us to invest in the community and continue our growth, but do it in such a manner that it doesn't, at the end of the day, look like a big white elephant that we built for hoping that businesses come when they know they probably won't.
Okay, let me get back to what we're the immediate conversation.
Okay.
County executive. How would term 3 be different than term 1 and 2 for you?
Well, what I want people to understand as county executive is we've been able to manage government well. We've managed it financially well. We've reduced the tax rate, have balanced budgets. We've been able to guide the community through the storms, and we have had plenty of storms, including this last year. And we're going to do the thing that I said I was going to do, and I still have been doing, which is focus on the economy. When I ran for county executive, we were in some tough economic times. I said, your county executive needs to be your chief economic person. And that's what I've been, is focusing on the economy. When I took office, the unemployment rate in Erie County was 8.9%. It's now 3.9%. But that means that 3.9% of the population is still looking for jobs. So we're going to continue to work hard to create jobs for people in this community by creating an environment, working with our business community to grow jobs. We've done that at the ECIDA. We're continuing to do it through our investments at the old Bethlehem Steel site. And we're in the process of acquiring and building an agribusiness park to support our agricultural community in the southern part of Erie County. So what my general thought is, if you like what I've done over these last few years, well, you'd get more of that in a third term, because I'm still going to focus on the economy. I'm still going to ensure that our government is run fiscally prudent. And if there's a storm, whether it's a snowstorm, a windstorm, or a flood, we're going to be out leading the community through that as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned the unemployment rates, and to an extent, and that might be an issue in this election campaign. When you took office, the unemployment rate nationally and in New York was 8.9% nationally, 8.3% in New York, and now nationally it's 3.7% and 3.9% in New York State. So it's kind of like, I'm not quite sure whether we could say we're all along for the ride, or whether we've specifically done things, whether you can claim credit for the unemployment rate. That's something that we'll have to kind of take with
Certainly
a grain of salt.
Certainly not going to take credit for all
You
of
know,
it.
but it's the overall picture has changed since you've been in office. We, as a state, have been losing population. And one of the things that is troubling is that over the number of years, the people, you know, we're one of the few states that has a net loss of population, and that is got to make it tough revenue-wise, because the people who are leaving the state, typically, and this is arguable, but typically I think those are the taxpayers. And so, you know, the more taxpayers that leave, the less revenues, and then the tendency is to raise revenues by taxes and fees, which causes more people to leave. Doesn't that make it harder for you?
Well, it does, but I will note that this period that we've been in lately is one of the few periods in the last 50 years where Erie County's population has actually gone up. We
Slightly.
But it has gone up, because you will agree with me, because you lived through the 80s, 90s, you know what it was like in 2000 when they were losing 50 to 60,000 people per decade.
Right.
For us to be going up is a good sign. There is population loss, especially in most of upstate New York, thankfully not in Erie County. I can't take credit for all of the growth. It'd be silly to do it. But we have implemented policies at the ECIDA which have created 3,098 new jobs through the projects we've incentivized. I said I was going to focus on bringing Canadian businesses to our region. No local official was doing that, and the state wasn't doing it. And we work with Invest Buffalo Niagara, and since I've taken office, we've had 45 wins of Canadian companies that have come to the Buffalo Niagara region, have created more than 1,000 jobs, and invested $146 million in this community. That wouldn't have happened, I believe, if I hadn't been county executive, because no one in local government was focusing on that. Everyone tried to get back the jobs that we lost 50 years ago to Texas or Carolina, and I was like, those jobs aren't coming back. But there's no reason that a Canadian company that's looking to move into the United States wouldn't move here rather than going to Texas or Carolina, and we've been able to be successful in that area. It's always difficult when you're dealing with a tough climate nationwide, statewide. We've got a better climate nationwide. We've had an okay climate statewide. And I'm proud to say, while other areas are hurting, we're actually succeeding here in Erie County. And I look forward to continuing that if I'm given the privilege to serve another term as county executive.
Well, I wish you luck. I thank you for being on the program. That's all the time that we have. It goes very, very quickly, as I constantly say. I'd like to thank Mark for being my guest on the program this week. And if it's at all possible, I'd like to suggest that as the campaign progresses, I want to suggest that we have a debate between Mark and Lynn. Now, I'll do all the arrangements, and if we can get everybody together, maybe that would be interesting, informative, and helpful. You know, going forward, we'll see if we can make that happen. Anyway, as always, I want to thank you for watching The Big Picture, but more than that, I want to encourage you, the people of Buffalo, our viewers, because you are the best and brightest of Western New York. I want to encourage you to take part in the big picture by reaching out to us with your ideas, your questions, your subjects, and your feedback, because I want this program to be your program. Call the station at 716-630-WBBZ or email me at phil.arno@wbbz.tv. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time on The Big Picture.